Just Baseball Show for Monday, November 11th. As always, it's presented by BetMGM. Off-season rolls on. Tanner Bibee joins the program. He chats with Aram. He chats with Peter. And you guys went, what, like 50-something minutes with him?
Yeah, I was a little nervous at the end. I was like, it's going to be one of two things where it's, that was an hour, or, right. Oh, my gosh, that was like 2.5 hours. Fortunately, we got the former, which was great, which means we didn't, I think, make Tanner too bored over the time. But there's just so many things to talk about given the season that he had and just everything that he accomplished this year, having the full year after being Rookie of the Year runner-up. I mean, having these postseason appearances and this run that the Guardians had and this kind of new vibe that the team has. So suffices to say, Peter and I had a lot of questions ready for him, and he answers all of them so well. And I mean, it's so easy to root for this guy.
Well, you'll hear those in a moment. We got to talk about this Sasaki guy that is coming over, and we don't know when he's coming over and all that. But you made a nice point. Like, if it did drag on for the hour, that would have been Peter's fault. And by the way, Peter going dogs out right now on a hotel bed. We're in Lexington getting ready for the Bueller Family Foundation
those toes,
golf
baby.
event. Yeah, I'm watching the big toe fly around. This little piggy made its way to the market. But Peter is hanging out on the hotel bed, listening to our Sasaki conversation before we get to the Tanner Bibee conversation with Tanner Bibee. But the 411 on Sasaki is this. Roki Sasaki has been a wonderkind for the last 3 years. He spent 4 years in the NPB. I think it was 2022. He had a 19 strikeout perfect game and then K'd 13 in 8 no-hit innings or 7 no-hit innings in the next start. This guy has been a freak. We saw the freakish nature in the 2023 World Baseball Classic. He is, and I think this is dependent on the situation, as hyped of a Japanese phenom as we've ever had, because the media temperature is different now than it even was for Ohtani coming over. Mm-hmm. And Ohtani, like, the expectations were sky high. He surpassed those. I feel like the expectations are almost higher because we're aware of this guy.
Yeah, and I think it's important to get out in front and be like, okay, I don't think anybody is as maybe ever going to have an impact, coming over from anywhere that Ohtani did. But it's a good point. It's like a culmination of things, right? Where Ohtani's prevalence and kind of taking over, MLB, and then you also have the youth and how impactful already Roki Sasaki was at 19 years old. Right. You also have what he did in the World Baseball Classic and just, touching 101 and just the life on everything that he was throwing. And it's like this perfect storm. And then the tease of like, is he going to come this year? Is he not? Right. I think kind of built up even more. So now it's become this massive, massive story. Whereas Yamamoto, who, is quite accomplished. I don't know if there's anybody as accomplished as him on the mound, obviously came with plenty of fanfare and a lot of discussion, but it was kind of 0 to 60 or 0 to 100 really quickly, whereas this feels like it's been a slow buildup that is really making it a huge story and a big thing to talk about.
That's the thing, and something that we need to acknowledge is each success story coming from Japan in turn makes the next guy like more sought after and a bigger deal media-wise. So the fact that Yamamoto came over and looked as good as he did, and I'm not talking about, mid-February in Korea or whatever that was, like that weird regular season game or mid-March. Stupid. But Yamamoto was so good. And this is different than a Yamamoto and even a Darvish and a Masahiro Tanaka, because these guys came over after they turned 25, after they played 6 seasons in Nippon professional baseball, and they could sign big money deals. Yeah. The other thing is Sasaki, in terms of accolades, is nowhere close to the level of accomplishments that a Yoshinobu Yamamoto is at. Like, Sasaki didn't win a Sawamura Award, which is the equivalent to the Japanese Cy Young. Darvish was one of the best pitchers in NPB's recent history. Tanaka, same deal. Yamamoto, maybe the most accomplished before coming over to Major League Baseball. And even Ohtani, Ohtani was an award winner, and he was considered an all-time talent in NPB before coming over. Sasaki's career was just getting started. And the fact of the matter was, if we got a fully healthy Sasaki for the next 2 years, he'd probably win a Sawamura Award or something. He would rack up those accolades to look like that, and he would probably be in the conversation of a $300 million pitcher when coming over. We're going to get to the whole financial thing in a moment, because I read a bunch of articles on this because I was fascinated by it. But this guy, frankly, he's just not as decorated as the other guys that are coming over.
I would say it's somewhat comparable to maybe Ohtani when he was coming over, and who also went the IFA route, which we're going to get into, which doesn't allow him to be open market free agent the same way. Of course, open market in terms he can pick whoever he wants to sign, but it's not going to be $300 million. It's going to come from the bonus pool. With Ohtani, though, it was like, okay, he's doing both, and that intrigue, I think, just made him so unique. But, I mean, Ohtani wasn't taking the NPB by storm. Right away. He had a little bit of a learning curve, as most 18, 19-year-olds would.
And it's what is he going to be? And it was just so tantalizing.
Sasaki has already been incredible. Yeah. So I think that's also like 18, 19, 20 years old already showing what he has shown makes him really unique, and I think makes the hype pretty ridiculous. But usually players like that wait it out a little bit longer and then get their mega contract when they come over. Unique situation with Sasaki here, who just seems very keen on getting over, and I think finally his ball club too, the Marines, right?
The Marines, not the Mariners. So I saw somebody called out on somebody got called out on the
Marines. I think finally felt like, you know what, let's just get this thing done with already, because it had been looming, I think, for them too, and it just shows you how much this has been a story for a while.
So I'm going to try my darndest to explain the financial situation. I spent a lot of Saturday morning and Friday morning reading about how this is going to work for Roki Sasaki. And I think Stephen Nesbitt did a great job on The Athletic, and I know ESPN.com did a great job as well. MLB.com, Jonathan Mayo did a nice job laying all that stuff out as well. But the 411, to the best of my knowledge, is this. Is Roki Sasaki a Dodger already? No, he's not. Is he going to sign a $300 million deal with a team? No, he cannot. The reason for that, there are guardrails put in place by not only Nippon Professional Baseball, the league over there, but also Major League Baseball. You have to be 25 years old. You have to spend 6 pro seasons in NPB in order to be posted according to NPB and Major League Baseball's traditional standards. So when you see a Seiya Suzuki come over for about $90 million, that is because he was older than the age of 25. He spent more than 6 years in Japan. Same with Yamamoto, same with Darvish, same with Tanaka when he came over, same with Shota Imanaga. The only previous example that I think makes sense here is Shohei Ohtani.
Yep.
Because Ohtani came over, and Ohtani's bonus with the LA Angels was not gaudy. And this was before the last CBA. Remember, there was a lockout between Ohtani showing up and what we have now with Roki Sasaki. The team that posted Shohei Ohtani was given $20 million as a posting fee. That was just a flat fee because Ohtani signed a big money IFA deal. The rule is this now. The team that posts that player, if a major league team signs them, I believe they get 20% of that contract back. So I think it was $325 million going to Yamamoto. The Dodgers ended up paying Yamamoto's NPB team about $50 million as a posting fee. This Roki Sasaki can only sign within an MLB team's international free agent bonus pool. So you see these 16-year-old Latin guys, when the IFA period opens on January 15th, they sign for $1.85 million. That's the pool Sasaki falls into. So we're not looking at $300 million. We're looking at a guy that is going to make $750,000. He's going to be pre-arb. He's going to have to go through 6 years of control before he hits free agency. So it's 3 years of the league minimum and then arbitration for 3 years.
Which is really interesting, because if he waits 2 more years, then he hits the 6-year mark and he's able to be
he could be a $300 million pitcher.
Be a $300 million pitcher. So there's the way that the new CBA is set up and everything, it really, I think incentivizes also these international teams to hold on to their guys, because, I mean, that's a big payday and can make a huge difference. And obviously Yamamoto probably opened up a lot of spending opportunities for his former ball club. So I think that's the really interesting part of this, where clearly there was a lot of discussion. And I think I got to the point where clearly the Marines just, I think, didn't want to carry this conversation on much longer, because it would be another couple years of doing it.
Yeah.
And with Sasaki, okay, people might wonder, well, why would Sasaki want to do this, right now instead of, waiting 2 more years? You can recoup that money on the back end, right? So he can hit free agency at 29 now and get a pretty significant deal there. Whereas, if he gets the deal on the front end, you hit free agency, who knows when. Right. You'd also be 2 years later to the show there. So I think that's a wrinkle in it where they feel confident. I guess his team probably feels confident that they're going to recoup that money at 29 years old on the back end. And even if it's a slow start out of the gate, whatever, he has 6 years of team control essentially, where he's going to be able to make himself quite valuable in the open market.
And you say his team, by that you mean his agent,
yes,
people around him. You don't mean Chiba Lote.
No, the people that are helping decide and have a vested financial interest in this decision.
The team, like the Chiba Lote Marines in NPB, are getting financially fucked.
Yeah, it's not good.
Like point blank, this is the worst decision you could possibly make in terms of having a star talent, because under the previous CBA, Ohtani's team in NPB still got $20 million because that was just how that worked. But now, say a team uses, and usually it's $5.5 to $7 million in IFA money that you can spend. Mm-hmm. And I know that those totals are well documented, whether it's The Athletic, ESPN.com, MLB.com, wherever you may look. So, like, say Roki Sasaki signs for $2.5 million in international free agent money. That's his signing bonus. He signs for 2.5. 20% of that, I think, is $500,000.
Yeah.
That's what Chiba Lote is getting. They get $500,000 for Roki Sasaki versus Yamamoto's team getting near $50 million last year.
Which is, it's really interesting. And when you read the statements from both sides, it's a larger conversation we'll have later on, but like, I think Sasaki references ups and downs.
Yeah.
And I'm like looking at the stats, and I'm like, well, what are the ups and downs?
There are not many downs.
And kind of same energy from the ball club as well. So, I think there was probably a lot of push and pull.
Yeah.
And, I think you were talking about earlier, like a story where he was basically asking Gregory Polanco about Major League Baseball. Sasaki was like every single day.
Every day for like 2 years.
I think it was kind of well known that he preferred not to be there, and it was probably just kind of creating a little bit of a rift there. And so I think eventually the ball club just said, hey, this is probably the best thing for everybody involved, and we're not going to hold you hostage for 2 more years. And I appreciate that and respect that, because that is a unique spot in this whole thing. This won't come up very often because guys are not going to take the league and the international circuit by storm at 19, 20, 21 years old like this. It'll happen a little bit more.
Yeah.
But usually the 6 years, it takes the 6 years in KBO, NPB, whatever it may be, to build your notoriety and prospect status to then be coveted by teams like this. So it's a unique situation.
If Yamamoto forced his way out this way, I mean, we're not talking about Yamamoto in this way. I think we're talking about Sasaki in this way because he hit, 102 miles an hour when he was 19 years old.
Exactly.
And because Yamamoto's been so good, and Ohtani's been so good, and Darvish and Tanaka and Imanaga, they've all been so good. So this is a unique circumstance. We lay all that out to show you that financially, the Colorado Rockies can sign Roki Sasaki.
They can pull this off.
Every team can pull this off. All 30 teams have near identical sums that they can work with. The exact posting date is really important. Mm-hmm. The LA Dodgers have, I think, more IFA money available to spend than any other organization in Major League Baseball in the 2024 IFA period. That IFA period ends on December 15th. There's a 45-day window for a player to sign after he's posted.
Yeah.
If Roki Sasaki is posted before December 15th, you have any time leading up to December 15th to sign in that period. And in turn, the only available spenders are people that still have 2024 IFA money left over. So the Texas Rangers, I think, would be a great fit for Roki Sasaki. They literally can't sign him if Sasaki is posted in the next 2 weeks because they have $0 to spend in international free agency. If he delays posting, and if Chiba Lote delays posting until after December 2nd, then all 30 teams have a fresh IFA pool that they can tap into. The best case scenario, and I think the scenario that Chiba Lote will do, is they delay his posting until late December, early January. He signs once the 2025 IFA period opens. I don't think you're going to see Roki Sasaki sign before January 15th. I'll lay that out there because that's when the IFA period opens, and that's when everybody has free reign to spend as much as they want. He's not going to sign for, I think, more than $3 million. I think it's going to be in the 2.5 range that he'll get. But in essence, all 30 organizations have that to spend. So it really comes down to what situation do I want to be in and go through my pre-arb and arb years with.
And that's a really interesting part because, again, we'll do another breakdown, full kind of just discussion on several of the international guys that are going to be free agents here. But, I think if it was an open market in terms of, we're not working with bonus pools here, it would have been a really interesting situation in terms of, like, obviously a lot of teams are going to be lining up to pay him a lot of money, and as they should. But there are some, like, yellow flags of this last year of, like, okay, are you going to give this guy 10 years or whatever? Like, his velocity was down 2 miles per hour. He lost 2 inches of IVB, which was kind of wild on the fastball. He wasn't spinning it nearly as well on his breaking balls. That's not to say, like, oh, this is not a good signing. But, when you're seeing that and we're talking about $200 million.
Right. It's a big deal.
Yeah, so a team may be willing to go 250, and another team might say, hey, I don't know if I'm going to do that for a guy that's, did have the most frustrating year health-wise that he's had.
And it also boxes out 20 major league teams.
Yes, exactly. But now it's open for everybody.
The pool is open to 30. And remember the Ohtani sweepstakes. It was not who's going to spend the most money. It's what situation does he want to enter? Yep. Like, Seattle was a player there. The Cubs were a player there. Mm-hmm. Like, there were a lot of organizations that were players for Ohtani because they could financially compete in this bucket. And we're going to break down Roki Sasaki, the player, and, like, what... It's funny because he had like a 205 or whatever.
He was still fantastic.
He was fantastic, but like what went wrong, quote unquote, in 2024? We're going to do that on the call up a little bit later this week. But I just wanted to lay out, in terms of who can be in the Roki Sasaki sweepstakes, it's literally all 30 teams. Obviously, the Dodgers are the reported heavy favorite because they have Ohtani, because they have Yamamoto, because they just won the World Series.
And the development side, too, I think is important. Because, again, we're talking about, hitting free agency. The goal is to be, who's going to help me be the best pitcher I can be by the time I hit 29 years old from a performance, health, everything perspective. And I think, you remove everything. Remove the Japanese players that he would have on his team that would give him some familiarity. Remove the World Series. Right. The Dodgers, objectively speaking, are one of the best development situations for him to go to as well.
As a player, it's just the best situation in Major League Baseball.
And you're in LA and all those things. So that alone would make them still a favorite. But then there's others that fit that bill too in terms of an opportunity for him to develop. And I think especially with the trend that we saw with some of the characteristics of his stuff, like, I'm sure these teams are each probably pitching him on, like, hey, I think we can help you get to the next level, which would be one of the best pitchers in Major League Baseball. Right. So that's the fun wrinkle in this thing too, is he faced relative quote unquote adversity for his standards, right, where he was not consistently unhittable, where he had a couple outings where teams could be competitive against him, still was phenomenal this year, where I think it might be, okay, what did you see and how can we tweak it and how can we get it right? So I think that's going to be an interesting wrinkle in this whole pitch as well.
Last thing, just want to key people into the conversation that we had in the car, because we had about an hour and 14 minutes to fill going from Cincinnati to Lexington in the hotel. Peter said 99.8% chance that he's an LA Dodger. You said it at like 95.
I agree. I think it's 90 something.
All I'm saying is entertain the field.
Like, I agree.
Entertain the field. I said maybe a little under 50%, and like that might be way too low. Obviously, the Dodgers are a great situation, but I'm just saying entertain the field, because I feel like there's a world where this guy may want to come over and be a top dog.
Yeah.
Be in the running to be an opening day starter. Like, hey, maybe he has this amazing mentor-mentee relationship with Yu Darvish. They played together in the World Baseball Classic. Like, why can't San Diego be a good fit for him? There's a certain organization, like, I'll use the Rangers again. Like, the Rangers have an aging DeGrom. They have Rocker and Leiter here on the back end. And then they have these tweeners in, like, Malley and Gray.
And they want to cut payroll. So this is one way where they can acquire a stud, not have to worry about cutting payroll too much, and say, you're our guy. Like, you're part of the future here. And
it's like, hey, Darvish loved it. We tried it with Kohei Arihara. It didn't go well, but, like, we still tried it, and I'm sure he can tell you good things about this place. Like, I just think entertain the field a little bit more than I feel like pretty much everybody is saying, like, oh, he's a Dodger. Great.
The Red Sox can put together a really nice pitch, too.
Exactly. Like, I think there's a world where the field makes some sense with Roki Sasaki. So that's what we've got. Again, Roki Sasaki, the player breakdown, how dominant he was in 22 and 23, where he took step backs in 24. That's going to be coming on the call-up a little bit later this week. But without further ado, here's Arm and Peter's conversation with Guardians right-hander Tanner Bibee.
Tanner Bibee, right-handed pitcher for the Cleveland Guardians, now reoccurring guest here on the Just Baseball show. Last time we talked to you, it was a four-man interview. Yourself and Stephen Kwan came onto the pod. We're going to talk about the season. We're going to talk about the playoffs. We're going to look at the 2025 outlook for the Guardians. But the most pressing question in my mind now, we had this debate with Stephen Kwan, both California guys, Culver's versus In-N-Out. and you were pure in and out because you are intelligent like myself. I'm curious, have you had Culver's recently? Can you interject? Is there a competition there, or is it still in and out?
Haven't had it. I mean, I've heard good things, but every time I want a burger and I'm in like California, Arizona, places like that, like I'm going in and out.
Thank you.
It's not really much of a discussion.
Aram doesn't like that answer.
I don't. I prefer not having chopped up pickles in my sauce. I'm sorry.
Bro, you don't know so what you need to do. When you go there next, get the burger, whole grilled onion on the burger, and then get some chopped chilies in there if you like some spice.
Thank you. Whole grilled.
It's amazing.
And animal style, right?
Yeah, you can.
Okay. Well, Peter's order is so like detailed. You have to go back there and like cook it yourself, and you got to burn the fries. You got to like I just like.
Oh right. Yeah, dude, the burned fries are good though.
Well done fries. That's what I'm saying.
Yes.
Guys who know In-N-Out know In-N-Out. You get the well done fry. You get double or 3x3 whole grilled onion, animal style. I'm not a tomato guy. Don't need it. Just pickles.
Yeah,
all
that's
those
fair.
Grilled onions.
Neither is Tom Brady, and you guys have a lot in common.
Yeah. Brady, myself, Bibee, all aligned.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's 2 1/4 good athletes there, right? But the other thing that
I'll take it.
The other thing that I really remember distinctly from that episode, though, Tanner, was you guys kind of calling your shot. You know, I don't think you did it in a way like, oh, we're gonna full out win the division, but like it was palpable how confident you guys were. And I know a big part of that, and something I know Peter wants to get into more so, is just Stephen Vogt and what he brought to the table. But beyond that, just the group that you guys had. Like, obviously goals to win the World Series, but you guys had a phenomenal year. You're one of the best teams in baseball for the majority of the season, performed well in the postseason. Like, was this exactly what you guys thought you could do? And, you know, how did the season go overall as you kind of look back on it now?
Yeah, so I think it was definitely interesting because like the vibe, I mean, I wasn't with the team in spring training or like super early on, like first couple weeks in 23, but in 24, it was like as soon as we got into spring training, it was like Vogt, Albie, Kai, Carl, like even Hedgie, like the whole time it was like our goal is to win the World Series, not to make the playoffs, not to win the Central, it's to win the World Series. So every time that got brought up, that was just like pounded into our mind, like World Series, World Series, World Series, World Series. So when we got to the hot start, it wasn't like a shock to any like the players, coaches, or whatever. And I feel like it was a shock to everyone else just because of how we were in 23. But I feel like everyone kind of knew who was on the team in 22 and 23 that they were definitely more of the player in 22, not 23. So I think that just carried over into 24. And I think it was just more of a mindset than anything. Because I feel like the whole time we were just thinking win, like, yeah, people like they want to play well and everything like that, but it was the whole time it was just like win, win, win. And obviously we didn't get to the final stage of that, but it's a super hard thing to do. And for us to have that turnaround of having the first overall pick in the draft to being in the ALCS like Final Four, I feel like, yeah, it's not what we wanted, but it's still a really cool accomplishment.
Talking about what Arm was saying from the last episode, a sense of confidence, right? But I also felt from that interview that both of you, there was kind of a chip on your shoulder going into the season that you kind of wanted to prove people wrong. I'm curious, Tanner Bibee, the hater, going after the haters. What was something that you felt that people before the season started got wrong about the Guardians that then you guys built on that, used that chip on your shoulder to ultimately prove all of those people wrong?
I think the easiest one was the whole part about the offense, about how like they're going to be anemic, whatever this, whatever that. We had, what was it, 4 position player all-stars. We had like David Fry coming out of nowhere, Josh finally getting the recognition he deserves. Same with Quan and Jose being Jose. Then we had 4 guys in Gold Glove talks. Obviously Hemi, Rokio, and stuff like that. Like I just feel like they thought that we were this like contact team, weren't going to put up a lot of offense, and like the first half, like we were probably one of the more offensive teams in the MLB. And obviously it's hard to keep that through a whole 162 game season, but there's averages for a reason. And whether we hit more home runs or whatever, I mean, we won more games, and that's the whole thing about it. And I feel like what we did without Shane being healthy, without Steph being healthy, with Henches going down. It just makes it that much more impressive because our bullpen had two guys kind of go down for the season, and it didn't really matter. I mean, Tim steps up, Cade steps up, Gaddis steps up, and it turns into a unbelievable, like historically good bullpen. So I think it was just that like a next man up mentality, and I think I don't know what the haters can really say at the end about this last year. Yeah. Is what I'm going to say. But obviously, next year's a new year, so we're not going to get into that right now.
Love that. So I was going to follow up with exactly the Shane conversation there, because I mean, obviously, bona fide stud, he's proven himself in this game, but just it was all about the health, and he comes out, and I mean, he couldn't have had a better first two starts. I think it was like 12 shutty, 20K, something like that, and then he goes down, and I think we all in unison, on the show, were like, okay, that's obviously a very tough blow. But good news is they've got some other arms there. They've got some guys, and it's Tanner's time to kind of grab the top of that rotation and help lead the ball club. I know that you have a ton of arms in the fold, and it's not one guy that, carried that rotation. But did you feel a sense of like maybe a responsibility to set the tone? And like clearly you were that guy down the stretch and in the postseason. But when Shane went down, did you feel like, hey, I got to set the tone for this rotation?
I mean, Shane's one of a kind. I mean, I actually was talking to my girlfriend the other day, and we were talking about Shane's Cy Young season. I looked up his stats, and I was like, oh my God, this guy had like 120 punchies and 77 innings in 2020. But so he's kind of a one of a kind. I mean, he's kind of done it all, like World Series MVP, Cy Young, all this kind of stuff. So, I mean, it's not a thing of replacing him. I just think I've always said it's like about me kind of being myself. Because I always knew I can be that kind of guy, but like, it's my second year. Like, I'm not going to put super crazy expectations on myself. And just Shane going down with just like the leadership aspect of it. I feel like for me, I mean, we're from the same area. And ever since I came up, it was him and Cal in 23. And then obviously Cal went to the Rockies. So he was kind of in spring training, kind of taking me through the ropes still. I mean, still first spring training. So I think him going down definitely kind of hurt the squad, obviously. But I think all of us that were healthy and pitching, it was just kind of like that next man up mentality. Like, just because Shane went down doesn't mean our job is any different. Our job is to throw up zeros. Our job is to get the 6 innings, get the 7 innings, and keep our team in the game. So, and most of the games that he pitches, we're not pitching. So it still doesn't change our job regardless.
So I want to talk about that bullpen, because you've used the term next man up mentality and even how it worked into the bullpen. But I mean, this bullpen was historically good, and sometimes people throw the word around historically, but no, this was historically good. Class A was one of the best relievers that we have ever seen, point blank period. You got Gaddis, you got Heron. I mean, you can just continue to go down the line of just incredible pitchers. And these weren't guys that were nice compliments to Class A. In their own rights, they were all some of the best relievers in baseball. So there is a testament to that next man up mentality, but it does feel like this bullpen goes even beyond that when you get into the historical rankings of best bullpens in MLB history. So can you just walk us through, right from the beginning of spring training? I know you weren't there quite at the start, but you were there and then watched all of these guys develop. I'm just so fascinated by how incredible this bullpen was this year.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like Class A has been doing it for a super long time now. I mean, he's in his mid-20s, and he is already the Cleveland saves leader for the entire franchise. Like, there's really I don't think I could sit here and say anything about him that would really shock anyone or that would really move anyone. But I mean, Gaddis, Cade, and Tim, it's all their first full year in the big leagues. Cade didn't even find out he was going to be on the big league roster until 24 hours before opening day. Tim was kind of up and down last year, and same with Gaddis. They were in different roles, but Tim was up freaking 6 times last year. And for him to come in and kind of have to not be phased, I feel like Tim is the one guy in those 4 people that's kind of overlooked. I mean, I'm pretty sure he had a sub-2 ERA this year, or something close to it. And you look at Cade, because Cade has the best fastball in the big leagues, and Gaddis was the setup guy to Class A, had a sub-2, had all this stuff. And just all 4 of them, that's not even talking about Eli, who had a sub-2, Sandlin, who had a super good year, Pedro who ate up innings. It's just, and then Sabrowski and Walters to come up at the end. And I think in the final, their first 2 to 3 weeks in the big leagues, neither of them gave up an earned run going into the playoffs. It's just like, dude,
that's what we're talking about. History.
It's like so many guys go overlooked in that pen, and that's not even still not even talking about the guys who are kind of up and down or hurt, like Strzelecki, Hedges, like those guys. Like it's just there's so many names. I'm sorry if I'm missing your name, but it was insane. It was literally like every time if the starter came out of the game and we were in the lead or we were like down one, it was like, well, we got to score one to tie it up. We got to score two and we win because it was more than likely than not they were throwing up 0. Yeah. It was insane.
Is that scouting development? Because some of these guys have been bouncing around, like you said, and barely made the team and then ended up excelling. Others were guys that made their debuts. Is it kind of getting these guys the right information as to how their stuff can play, or is it just simply a bunch of guys that hit their stride all at the same time? Like what would you attribute it to? Because it's one thing to have a really good bullpen, and there's always times where a few guys just like see it click at the same time. But I mean, it's just so hard to ignore the fact that it was everybody, like you just said.
Yeah.
What's the magic kind of dust that the Guardians have here, and especially with the bullpen?
I feel like everyone sort of hit their stride at the same time, but all for kind of different reasons. Like this was Gaddis's first year as a full-time reliever. Tim, this was his first year being in the big leagues the whole year and not kind of getting bounced around. Cade, I mean, Cade is Cade. Guy's a robot. He's unbelievable. For Pedro, it's getting traded over to us and kind of whether it was like pitch tweaks or pitch profile or how you move, whatever. And then Sabrowski and Walters, I mean, they kind of just hit the ground running. I mean, Sabrowski I think he got Rule 5 from the Padres. And then Walters, we freaking drafted him in 2023. It's like, Jesus Christ, dude. So it's just, I think everyone kind of hit their stride at the same time, but it was all for different reasons. And it worked out. I mean, when you're as talented as all those guys are, and when you finally kind of get comfortable and kind of get the resources you need, it's easy to succeed and kind of fall back onto your training.
Talking about another move working out, Stephen Vogt coming over as the new manager. And I mean, you guys win the division, right? You didn't get to that final step of winning the World Series, but I mean, first stop going all the way to the ALCS. I mean, what a debut for a manager. Can you just talk to, the impact that he had on the clubhouse? Kind of an overarching question, just how awesome is Stephen Vogt?
I mean, dude, he's freaking awesome. I mean, ultimate like player manager. I mean, he did things the right way. I really just feel like he handled everything. Like we always talk about like being a pro, and he was like the utmost pro. Like him, Albie, Kai, like all these new guys coming in and kind of just like immediately meshing into our culture and honestly like boosting the culture up was honestly a huge thing. I mean, I feel like Voter and Albie along with Hedgie is kind of like the bridge. It was an unbelievable dynamic that it felt seamless. It wasn't like he was a coach or like our like I guess our upper management. It was just kind of felt like this is a two-sided relationship and like yeah, you control what I do, but this is going to be for both of us. It's not going to be like, oh, you're my boss. Like it wasn't that at all. And I thought Vogt handled it amazing. I mean, I don't really have the pedigree to say that. I've been in the big league for 2 years, but from what I've experienced, it felt right. And obviously we went that far, so I'm guessing it was right.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard as a rookie manager and you could also just tell like the way that you guys mesh with them. Again, we were probably a little bit more sensitive to it because we could sense it when we spoke with you guys early, right before the season, and just what you guys were saying about Vogt and, what he brought to the table. But then when you're watching in these games, you could just see the trust and the connection that you guys have with him. Building on that though, you guys in the playoffs and especially nowadays and, the analytics and the side of things, and there's so many numbers that show like, third time through the order, not, you don't really want to let your starter do that no matter how good he is and all those things. And then when you do that, it's even more of a chess match because you're going to have 7 relievers that'll come in at different spots and mix and match. And he was a rookie manager. Like how much trust did you guys have in him, right away in the playoffs? And, just even with how many different moves and how busy it was, just continuing to say, like, I'm sure there was time I saw your face and I was like, he definitely didn't want to come out because you're a competitor, but like just trusting that, with all these different chess moves that, he's going to be able to make the right decisions and put you guys in the right spot.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like a lot of people, they watch the game from their couch, and obviously everyone has an opinion, whatever. But it's a lot harder than you think. There's a lot of emotion. There's a lot of outside noise. There's a lot of pressure. So I mean, at that point, all 26 players in the roster and all however many coaches we have, front office, like all the people below, like athletic trainers, stuff like that. Like our goal is to win, especially in the playoffs. It's to win today. It's not obviously like you need to win the series, you need to win best of 7, best of 5, whatever. But at that moment, it's about winning the game today. Because at that point, like if you lose, if you're trying to plan for game 7, it's game 2, you're probably not going to make it there.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think that they handled it really well. With how much pressure was on, and I mean, playing the Yankees in Yankee Stadium is always going to be a tough thing to do. Like going into Detroit, sneaky hard place to play, and to win that game 4 with our back up against the wall, and to be the best pitcher in the world this year in a game 5 in an elimination game. I mean, I feel like a lot of people are going to overlook that. And I think it was done really well.
So I want to get into your starts in the playoffs, some of your changes in the regular season, right? Some outlook on next year. But you've mentioned one player multiple times so far, and that is Austin Hedges. So for people who are reading the box score and don't understand the impact that Austin Hedges makes on the Cleveland clubhouse, because you guys then brought him back, right? Just recently, I think he signed another 1-year deal to come back. And I'm sure every single player in that clubhouse is ecstatic to have him back. Why are they ecstatic to have him back?
There's so much leadership and experience and just like being a great dude. I think part of it. I mean, I feel like if you just look at it from him being in Cleveland perspective, 2022, they go to the playoffs, they win the Central, and they go to the ALDS against the Yankees, end up losing. Leaves in 23, goes to the Pirates. They don't have a great year. Rangers trade for him. He wins the World Series with the team. And they were struggling when they got him, and they ended up winning the World Series after they got him. Then he comes back to Cleveland in 2024. We end up going to the ALCS, winning the Central, and being 3 games away from the World Series. I feel like just that, like if you like took away the name Austin Hedges and you put this person, you'd be like, okay, but people just don't get it because Austin Hedges' name should be just as important as a lot of those other people because he pounds the viewpoint that we need to hear. Like I said earlier, like the goal is to win a World Series, the goal is to win a World Series, the goal is to win a World Series. And I just think with the experience he has, the leadership he has, and just how he can portray a message, whether it's from the coaching staff, the front office, whatever. I think the way he can speak, I mean, he's going to be a manager one day. Like, no doubt in my mind. Like, whether it's like manager, like bench coach, whether he's in the front office, I don't know what he wants to do. I know he would like to be a manager, and he's going to be because he can control a clubhouse. He creates a phenomenal culture, and he brings the energy every day. He's the same guy every day. And he'll tell you he'll go through spurts. He really doesn't. Like he is the same guy every day, and that's who you want in the clubhouse.
I don't want Austin Hedges to be the manager of the Yankees now. He kind of fired me up. He did. He fired me up right there. All right, go ahead, Harvey.
I think you just like actually made Tanner want to leave now. It's like that's probably the one team they don't want to see.
It's like, okay, his favorite guy, the guy who's hyping up the Cleveland clubhouse, I actually want him on my favorite team now. That's what I think. Yeah.
This season too, I mean, for you, building on that rookie year, but I think the one thing that you mentioned, same job even when Shane goes down, that totally makes sense, but added importance to be able to be available too, right? Of course, you want to be available no matter what, but it's like, all right, now I really need to, throw as many innings as I can. And you did that. And what would you attribute that to? Because I mean, the fact that you're able to, build on a rookie year where you threw plenty of innings when you combine, the minor leagues and everything. And I mean, usually guys aren't coming up and just shoving for 142 innings. And then, you go this year at 173 and 2/3 plus the postseason, which I don't have exactly in front of me, but I'd imagine that puts you close to like 190 range. I mean, did you feel that at the end of the year? And, how much was it a preparation thing going into this year, knowing that, hey, we're going to make a playoff run. I want to make 30 plus starts. Like, was there an innings total in the back of your mind that you maybe just thought like, I want to be ready for this? Or was it just, I need my body to be ready in general?
Yeah, I think before the year you always have like a sort of like statistical goal, good something to work towards. Like especially like when you look back at the end of the year and you're like, oh, I got this, whatever. I think obviously 200 is always a nice number, but that's going to be a really hard number, especially in today's game. So I think the number I set for myself was 180, and I got close. I mean, I think I missed a start or two. I'm not sure what it came out to, but I mean, with the combined innings of the postseason, um, it did get to that number. But obviously, you always kind of want more, no matter where you are. I'm sure Scuba wanted more punch outs or something like that. But I just think it's I don't know, man. It's just you try to go out there, you get the ball in the first inning, and you try to go as deep as you can until someone takes the ball away from you every day, and that repeats for every 5-6 days from the end of March to either the end of September or the end of October. So it kind of just goes start by start and kind of figure out what you need to work on in between, and yeah.
So from watching you from your rookie year to this year, I didn't notice a ton of changes from a pitch usage perspective. It seemed kind of the same thing. Stay verti, attack with the fastball, and work off it with the breaking balls. But I did notice that you added a slider, or at least that's what Baseball Savant qualified as, is this new pitch that you started throwing 7% of the time. I'm just curious throughout the year, because Baseball Savant's not perfect, but did you pick up any new things along the way? And is that slider something that you're going to continue to build off of, because opponents hit 190 against it? Like, no shit, it's awesome.
So it was interesting. So the slider I threw last year. So last year I threw four seam slider, curveball, changeup, right? Um, so the slider I threw last year, I was throwing it this year, and I think my body was moving different. Something was going on to where it was higher in velo, and it was it didn't have as much depth.
It was riding pretty much a little bit, right?
Yeah, I think that's the difference. On Baseball Savant, they call it a cutter. So I was just curious, like, the difference here.
So pretty much, it was, where were we? We were in Colorado, and we were trying to get something with depth. I've had trouble throwing a curveball, at some points in my professional career, whatever. And our assistant pitching coach, Joe Torres, he wants something with like depth, something like bigger, like more velo difference, because it was like four seam was say at like 94, and this like cutter slider thing was probably averaging like 87. So there's some teams in the MLB where it's like, if you throw something that looks like a fastball and it's hard and it breaks off, they're not good at that. And sometimes there's teams that, when there's a big discrepancy in velo, they can't do that. So he wanted something with less velo. So pretty much we figured out this like slider sweeper thing. I don't like calling it a sweeper. I'm not a fan. I'm not against people. I don't know, dude. It just doesn't feel right. You can call it a sweeper, huh?
What feels right?
Calling that thing a cutter and this thing a slider.
Okay, I like that. You don't like sweeper.
It's fine if you call it a sweeper. I don't care. I'm just not going to call it a sweeper, and that's fine. So this thing kind of called the other thing a cutter, called this thing a slider, this big sweepy slider thing. And then eventually towards the end of the year, I finally figured out a curveball. Threw that in the postseason, and then towards the end of the year, started throwing a sinker too. Threw the sinker in college, so it's really easy to pick back up. I just thought it was nice to have two different fastballs with two different shapes, because usually I would think that hitters, they pick like one hard pitch, one slower pitch to kind of, I'm going to sit this, react this, or vice versa, whatever. So having two different hard pitches, I thought would really help that, whether it was like weak contact. Like I got a lot of double plays on it and a lot of ground balls in it in the playoffs, and even in the last couple starts of my regular season. So I think with the changes with that, I mean, dude, I tinkered with that a lot. I think when I got into the last couple starts in September, it kind of finally shaped up and finally kind of figured it out. Like got the 3 breaking balls down, got the sinker going, and it finally felt like, okay, like this is who I'm supposed to be. Like I'm gonna pitch. I'm not gonna like I have good stuff. I'm not gonna like super overpower you with it. At least last year I wasn't. So that's kind of where I was.
So, Arm, just before your quick follow up, I want to ask. So, your last start of the year against the Reds, I remember watching that. I think you threw 7 innings, 1 earned. Was that the start where it felt like everything came into place? Because I remember watching, I was like, this dude is dicing right now. He's got everything working. Did that feel like such a good start that just vaulted you into the playoffs?
Yeah, it was the last Twins one and the Reds one. I think that's when I really started using the sinker. And I remember the first curveball that I felt like I was like, wow, that's what that feels like. I punched out Christian Vasquez on a curveball in zone, and like usually like you can see kind of like generally shapes, and I'm so used to stuff being like this like super east west, and when I saw like the depth on it, I was like, okay, we're getting somewhere. And it kind of started clicking, and then I think towards like I remember the first like inning or two of that start was a little shaky, and then towards the end it kind of settled down a little bit, and kind of same thing with the Reds, and that kind of propelled me in the playoffs, like you said.
Love it.
So that's exactly what I was going to ask on the specific shape side. Cause like previously the curveball was kind of getting like -10, -11. And then this year it was -14 and -5, which is, 14 and 5 is that more vertical depth. Like, was it something about just the release point? Was it grip? Like, what was it for you? Cause that's a huge shift to be able to get that vertical depth like that, especially in season. I feel like that's usually something that you got to just keep trying with the Rapsodo and just keep experimenting with. So like to make that change in season's pretty remarkable.
I mean, I think that's all for Carl and Joe Torres. I mean, I think the entire year from I think we were in Colorado in like the end of May until September. Like that's kind of how long it took. I remember the first time I started throwing, the slider was against Seattle, and I punched out 12 that game. And it's all about adjustments. And I feel like in baseball, because I started throwing that more, people started adjusting to that, and then it's just kind of like figuring out a kind of a happy medium. But I mean, I think with Joe has helped me all year with trying to figure out this curveball and how to get depth on it, like what to think, like focal points. And in season, it's obviously like you said, like it's super hard to because you're trying to compete and you're trying to win and you're trying to pitch well, along with like the development in those 4 to 5 days in between. So I think I mean all the credit goes out to Joe. I mean, Joe Torres was the absolute man with helping me with that curveball, and he was the one who got it, who finally helped me get it there.
Let's so we catapulted from the regular season. You end super hot. You got all these pitches figured out. You're feeling good. Guardians win the division. You're into the playoffs, but you're one of the 1 seeds. So you get a bye, right? And the whole hubbub before this playoff started was the bye going to affect these teams? I want to talk about your preparation going into that game 1 start, how the start went and all that kind of stuff. But what was the bye like? I've never talked to a player about what those couple of days while everybody else is playing, and it's supposed to hurt you, right? That's what everybody told us, and didn't really hurt you guys. You scored 5 runs in the first inning.
Yeah, I think it's obviously, I guess people, it depends on what team, like what you do in between. Like if you're just going there and you're kind of practicing and you're kind of not taking it super serious, like, oh, let's just get out of here. Like, let's just go do this. I think, yeah, it could definitely hurt you. But I mean, I think the first day, so we had our last game rained out against Houston. That next day, we had a full off day, except for me and Gavin. We're throwing lives against the alt site guys. And it was horrible. Like, we're throwing in, we had the fake crowd noise on. Anyone who says that the 2020 World Series was easier is stupid, because that was so hard to get adrenaline going. Like, I was like 91, 93, and the alt site guys were dominating me. Didn't punch out a single person in like 5 innings, got dominated. And I think, and after that, I mean, it's just how you go about your week and how you treat your bye. It's the same thing. Like your actions have consequences. Like if an NFL team goes out, they play a game on Sunday, and every week you go Sunday to Sunday, Sunday to Sunday, and you go Sunday to Thursday, and you do the same thing as you're doing Sunday to Sunday, you're probably going to get hurt that next game. because your body is not going to be recovered. So it's just how you treat it. Whether you recover, obviously you're going to try to get as much recovery as possible, and just how you plan for the team.
So walk us through a little bit of the preparation then for that game one start. Because again, I have another follow-up question about, how it feels going out onto the mound, all that adrenaline, getting this scoreless first inning, and then your team puts up a 5 spot. And then you're sitting there, and I do want to ask about the preparation going into that start, but then just to follow that up, what that feeling is like on the mound after your team has already gotten that 5-run lead.
Yeah, so before the 5 runs happened, I just remember walking out to the bullpen to go get all my stuff ready. Obviously, we were in the playoffs last year, so I didn't really know what was going on in the playoffs. Everyone was like, "Oh, it's so awesome! It's so awesome!" So game one in Cleveland, I take a step out of the dugout, and as soon as I cross the line, the left field line to go out there, like the entire stadium starts going nuts, and I'm like, "Oh my god! Like this is insane." That's what I knew was like it was going to be a different animal. But I mean, I feel like that first, ever since the Tigers beat the Astros, I had like my stomach was in like knots for like days. And even like the Whoop band that I wear for that track sleep, it was like it was at my stress was at like almost like the highest level for like days straight. And I was like, this is not good for my health. And I think just that first inning, I was trying really hard to like keep the emotions in and trying to like really stay locked in. And I mean, the Tigers lineup was a really good lineup, especially at the top of it. And getting through that first inning, it was, I think, exactly what we needed. And I mean, for our offense to go out there, I mean, I usually go like into the tunnel and kind of sit there and kind of like unplug for a little bit before I like plug back in. And I remember going up there and kind of watching because it was taking a super long time, obviously, because they pulled Holton and put Olsen in. And I remember Lane being up there. He hits the ball, and it was like everything was in slow motion. Because it was like, I can't remember if it was that home run or the one he hit off Skubal, where it was like he hits it and the camera looks at him and he just like has like the dumbest smile on his face. And he's like, when he hit it, and I was like, this guy's a dumbass. But it was awesome, dude. That was one of the best, like the playoffs are the best thing ever.
Well, and it's funny because, I think people kind of assume that you look at you on the field and it's like, okay, he looks like he's comfortable, like it's any other start. I shot you a message before and you're like, yeah, I'm ready, looking forward to it. Like that's how I read it in my mind. Watching it. Meanwhile, you have this like, like any other human, this inner just stress because it's one of the biggest moments of your life. Did you pick anything up leading into that? Now that you pitched in several, high leverage situations and, in environments that you've probably never really thrown in, like, were there some things that you took away from this postseason now that when you're back there, presumably several times and many, many more throughout your career, that now you'll be able to apply as you prepare for, these high leverage starts in the playoffs again?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like obviously whoever you play in whatever series it is, you've played them in the regular season now with the scheduling changes.
Mm-hmm.
So I think one of the things that Shane told me literally like hours before the first start, he was like, just promise me you'll do this. He's like, just do not give them too much credit. Like, yeah, they made it here. Yeah, they're a good team. But if you give them too much credit, it takes away what you've done and all the work you've done to get here. And that was kind of the main thing he told me. And this was like probably like 3.5 hours before the first game. And up until that point, I was like, God, I don't know what's gonna happen. Like I just got hit around by the outside guys. Like, am I sharp? Am I this? Am I whatever? But I think what he told me, it really was like, wow. Like, I mean, he's definitely right. And I remember all of 2023, that was one of the things that I wrote down like almost every day. It was like, don't give them too much credit. Don't give them credit because they have to hit you. Like they haven't earned anything against you. So that was kind of like the one thing that I would take away for every single start the rest of my life.
And it worked. 4 2.
Yeah.
4 hits, 6 strikeouts, shutty. What's the feeling like walking off that mound to the roar of the crowd, knowing that you just threw 4 2/3 shutty in the playoffs against that team?
Dude, let me tell you. I mean, Cleveland showed out in the postseason for
Yes,
sure.
they did.
I mean, they get loud. I mean, they're on their feet almost the whole game. And I mean, I love playing there, man. It's unbelievable. They have unbelievable fans. They know baseball and they love watching us when we're going well. Um, it's an unbelievable feeling.
Can you talk a little bit about David Fry, please? Because
Oh,
throughout the season,
absolutely.
he was one of my favorite stories. And guy that's never appeared on a top 30 list. And I think in terms of where you're at and like where you were perceived as coming out of the draft and everything, I think you're an awesome story of like, man, how did we miss on that guy? But
Not
David
even the
Fry
same
takes
thing.
that
It's not even the same thing.
it
Yeah.
takes it to the nth degree, right? Where it's like, holy crap, this guy wasn't even really considered, a future big leaguer really by a lot of people. And here he is. Not only that, the guy absolutely mashes, but beyond that, he could still plug in behind the dish. He could play different spots. And even through that with a messed up elbow, like we talked about him on the show a ton. He was probably one of my favorite players and stories of the season. Like at what point did you realize this guy was not only for real, like was going to be a huge contributor for you guys this year?
I mean, I think in the minors, I mean, I played with him a little bit in Columbus because I mean, I was in Akron all of 22, and then I played with him in Columbus for a couple weeks, but in 23. But I mean, everyone I talked to, I mean, he was in the fall league a couple times with some of the guys I was teammates with in 22, and they're like, bro, he's just like Pete Rose, man. He shows up like he just has no, in the minors he had like no BGs. It was like he'd play third, he'd play first, and he'd catch. And it was just like whatever you asked him to do, it was like, all right. And he was hitting whatever he'd hit. He hit like 280 on the year with like however many pumps it was. And yeah, and then when he came up last year, I mean, they I feel like he got there. Obviously, everyone gets to the big leagues with a little bit of luck, but he gets up and his first appearance in the major leagues is him pinch running in Yankee Stadium, which is hilarious because he's slow. Sorry, Fry. But for him, it just shows like all the hard work. I mean, everyone kind of knew he was a little bit hurt, like fans wise, but the guy was a all-star and played left field, right field, third base, first base, and caught all and was a all-star, the second, I guess technically by voting wise in the all-star game, second best DH in the league. Um, and for him to do that with his UCL all like that, like it's unbelievable. And I mean, and he did it into the postseason. I mean, his clutch factor was dialed up to 1,000,000. So it didn't matter. I mean, he's just a gamer, man. Like those are the guys you want in your clubhouse, and those are the guys you want in those clutch situations. And he did it time and time again.
And the whole Guardians clubhouse is full of gamers. I mean, that's how you guys get to this point, and you're a gamer. I mean, I want to fast forward to your second start in Yankee Stadium, or no, it's excuse me, in Cleveland, the second start against the Yankees, because you struggle in the first start, but then even I was like, I know he's going to shove against us. I talked about it on the show, and I was like, he's going to make the adjustment and he's going to bounce back. But can you walk us through after that first start, the adjustments that you made into that second start, and then just walk us through that insane game against the Yankees?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like all those games in Cleveland were insane games. Like
Insane.
from one to the last inning, from the first inning to the last inning, dude, they were all insane.
Crazy.
So I mean, I think it was just kind of seeing what their plan was. I mean, that's the whole part, especially in a series like that, whether it's like more than three, 4 games, like anything longer than that, you really see what hitters are trying to do with certain people. So it's just trying to find that adjustment of what they're trying to do, like their strengths, your strengths, their weaknesses, your weaknesses, and it just kind of goes. It just kind of it's a happy medium. It's a balance. It's trying to find that and just trying to be able to adjust quicker than the next person. Um, I mean, they did it. Obviously, they did a great job of that too. I mean, Juan Soto played unbelievable. Stanton was unbelievable, of course. Um, and then like their whole lineup was good. I mean, the pitching was good too. But the second game in Cleveland was there was a little bit of anger to it. obviously. And for 5 2/3 innings, it was really good.
I think cumulatively it still was really good. I mean, it's one of those things where you got to line up with those guys getting their best swing off as much as they can. Like they run into one, but like what amazed me is how you turn that around and turn in the start that you did, and give your team a shot after like you said, the anger kind of applying that in the next way, but in a more controlled way instead of just trying to like overthrow or change something or whatever. Do you feel like seeing the same lineup twice in a series is an advantage to the pitcher or the hitters? Because it probably depends on the pitcher and depends on the hitters. But I think more often than not, we say, oh, they just saw him. They're seeing him again. I feel like generally it feels like advantage hitter. But as I monitor these postseasons, a lot of times these pitchers end up, the talented ones, the really good ones end up shoring things up the second time around. Do you feel like it's an advantage for you to see the same lineup again in a series?
I think so. I mean, I think it's like the cat and mouse game. Like, like you said, it's kind of it's a two-way street. I mean, the more pitches I throw to someone, they're going to see all those pitches and put it in their head and kind of put it in their like database in their head and figure out what to sit and be like, okay, I saw that pitch. Okay, I saw that pitch. That's what that pitch does. That's what this pitch does. And then it's just trying to figure out, like, for me, it's what is this guy trying to hit? What is this guy's holes? What is he trying to do with this? So I mean, it all changes. It's whether it's pitch to pitch, count to count, like at bat to at bat. Like it's so different, especially in the playoffs where everyone is such at high alert and everyone's paying attention to every single pitch. And I feel like during the regular season with the 162 games, I mean, there can be some outings where people are out of it or people are whatever. It's just natural. It's just human nature. So I feel like in the playoffs and everything's such high alert and stuff like that, nothing goes unnoticed. So that's the big thing. That's why only highly detailed teams and teams that can really execute are usually there. That's usually what happens. And I feel like that's what it was this year too. That's why the Tigers were where they were.
Yep.
Like that's why the Royals were there. Like we played both those teams a ton this year. And even when the Tigers were struggling, we were like, and we see that like we faced Flaherty like 5 or 6 times this year because he was with Detroit and the Dodgers and whatever. And facing the Tigers this year as much as we did. And it's just, what these guys are doing, but are they going to change their plan? Are we going to change our plan? It's a whole thing.
It's cool.
I'm fascinated by the term that you used, that you said you were pitching angry. And you've had a lot of success in your career. I don't think there have been many times where you probably had to pitch angry. Not saying that you had to, but you just felt it, that you were bouncing back from that start in a hyped up environment at home, huge game. Have you ever felt like you were in that second start against the Yankees, or was that maybe the angriest Tanner Bibee we've ever seen?
Oh, it's not the angriest. It's not the angriest.
Okay, good.
It was like, my mindset going into that game, honestly, I remember telling Quan this and telling Brennan, I was like, honestly, like we were down 3-1. It's like we have nothing to lose. Like we're supposed to lose this series. Like, wouldn't it be super embarrassing if they lost this series 3-1? Like, wouldn't we be saying that in the World Series? The Dodgers lost that last game in New York, and the Yankees went to New York, or the Yankees went to LA and took those last 2 games. It'd be like, that was a collapse.
Yeah.
Like once the Yankees went down 3-1 to the Dodgers, everyone was like, it's wraps. So for us, that was my mindset going into that game, was we have nothing to lose at this point.
Yeah. Makes sense. And I was thinking about, speaking of collapses, that 5th inning was one for the Yankees there. Just wanted to throw that. If you ever had a defensive display, I mean, you play for the Guardians, so probably not. You've never had a defensive display like that behind you, right?
I'm gonna not say anything about that.
Sorry,
I didn't. That was less for you, Tanner, and more for Peter. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I want to ask him.
I'm not gonna get caught up in that.
I want to ask him another question that I think again will get a no answer. But Kike Hernandez is talking about how the Yankees, that them going into, I think Joe Kelly even uttered the same sentiment. Like, this team kind of stinks, and not stinks overall, but just like their defense, that they're going to throw the ball. We just have to put the ball in play. Like, was that the game plan for the Yankees? Did you guys know how bad we were at base running and how bad we were defensively?
That's a silly comment, I think.
You
like
think from them, it's a silly comment?
yeah, like they're no from
Yeah.
them. Like, they're in the World Series.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like
they're a good baseball team, man.
Bro, they're a good baseball team.
Yeah.
Like, maybe I don't even know what the defensive metrics on the Yankees were, but like, bro,
they made it sound like
Volpe was a Gold Glove finalist. They had 3 Gold Glove finalists.
These Dodgers are acting like they were playing a junior varsity Yankees team. Like, they were laughing at stuff, and I'm just like, are we kidding? Were we just that
like
worse than them? I didn't think so.
Dude, they're a good team. They pitch, they hit. Maybe fielding's their 3rd worst thing out of the 3 biggest ones.
Yeah.
Like, dude, they're a good baseball team.
Yeah.
Thank you for making me feel better.
Yeah. I wanted to bring that one up because it was like, it was weird. It was a little weird to me too, because just like you won, you beat them down. Like, you didn't have to say anything beyond that. Like, I think it would have taken a little bit more than just putting the ball in play. I think a Freddie Freeman walk-off grand slam did a little bit of that, like all of those things. But
it was the same thing. Like, they were saying, like, you see, I mean, I'm on social media, so you see all the stuff like, oh, this is the easiest road for the Yankees to the World Series ever. It's like, bro, did you see any of those games we just played? Like,
that's what I was saying.
Like, dude, all these games, like, I think, I don't know if it was 1 or 2 of the games went into extra innings, and they all went into like the 9th inning, like we were tied or we were up and they came back. Like, didn't seem like a real easy road, but people will create narratives however they want.
And there was a lot of times where, like, you guys, you kind of feel that you guys playing with like not too much to lose, almost because of that narrative, right? Where it's like, oh, the Yankees are going to waltz in there. And I mean, a lot of times where I thought, okay, maybe this is where the Yankees separate themselves. Boom, big swing. You guys are back in it. Was it that playing with nothing to lose, or was it that we're never out of it kind of thing too? Because you add Elaine Thomas to the fold, which had to definitely give you guys a jolt, even though got off to a slow start with you guys.
Yeah.
You're getting an all-star caliber player when he's playing to the best of his abilities. And we saw that in the postseason. Like, how much did that jolt help you? And then having Jackenzie in there, like, you guys had players that could change the game in one swing on top of all of the other pieces that you already had. Was it more of playing with nothing to lose, or was it also feeling like, you guys were never actually out of a ball game with the depth all of a sudden that you had lineup wise?
I feel like it was more of us just knowing we're good.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like obviously you go in there, like, in some cases, like, you're going in there like, we should win this game. Like, if we do what we do, we're gonna win this game. And I feel like that's every, like, whatever, how many games we play, 170 something games, whatever it was. It was like, you go in there and you're like, if we execute what we execute, we should win this game. And sometimes it doesn't work out like that. But I mean, that's just the confidence you have to go every day, and that's the confidence you need to win a World Series, I think, and get deep into the playoffs. And sometimes there's a little luck to it sometimes, and obviously, like, that's why they always say, like, better be unlucky than good.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So I only have a few more questions. I might only have 1 or 2. I'm sure Arm's kind of in the same boat, but I couldn't leave the interview. Arm asked about David Fry. Talk to me about Big Christmas. Talk to me about Big Christmas. This got unbelievably electric. I mean, are you kidding me? That big home run too. Talk to me about Big Christmas.
Dude, he's hilarious. I mean, I think his homer into, like, the bat drop flip thing is like one of the hardest things I've ever seen. Like, dude, like, his homer off Drew Smiley whenever we played the Cubs this year, his, like, bat drop thing was like, I remember, like, looking on the dugout being like that was disrespectful. But he's awesome, dude. Like, awesome human. I mean, he's hilarious. And he just kind of, like, he's like a lot of the guys in the clubhouse, where it's just like, he's going about his day. He knows what he needs to do to succeed, and he always talks about it, man. He's always just like, he knows everyone has their plan, their process, and he executes it. I mean, I've been teammates with him at every single level, like high A, double A, triple A, and you always see the juice. I mean, the man has juice.
Yeah.
And it's him coming in there and doing what he did in his freaking first major league at bat, and he just carried it over, and he meshed with all of us just as everyone thought he would. So he's awesome.
Another guy that was kind of discounted after a rough, relatively speaking, 2023 for him after, what he did the year before that. And I think that also is like chip on the shoulder thing that just seems to be the commonality with a lot of you guys, in that clubhouse, where it's like just outperforming maybe what a lot of outsiders thought and then cumulatively doing that. Last one for me is just kind of going into next year. You guys will always still have that because people are always still going to go to the big market teams and say, oh, it's the Yankees, it's this and that. But I mean, there's going to be a little bit more of a target on your guys' back now, right? Like everyone knows how good you guys work. So again, it wasn't just this late run that you had. You dominated most of the regular season, and then you had a nice showing and a really strong showing in the postseason. And a lot of reasons to believe that your guys are only going to be better next year. So I know that you're still going to go in with the same mentality, but like, how do you guys feel going into next year? Because it is a little bit different. It's not the first year manager. It's not the kind of making up for a year that didn't go as great as you wanted the year before. It's, hey, we had a good year. We didn't quite finish the mission, but a lot of people are looking at us as one of the teams to beat now.
Yeah, I mean, I think I feel like having the target on the back sometimes is a good thing, especially for a lot of. I mean, we're a very young team. I think it's a super good thing because I mean, it kind of keeps you alert. It kind of keeps you kind of focused on what you need to do. I mean, at the same time, like if you just take all that out of it, I feel like I would assume all our entire freaking 40-man system, they know what they need to do to get better and what they're lacking in and what like they'll have their process this off season to hopefully fix it or make it a little bit better. So the floor raises a little bit, but there's always going to be like people who I won't say hate on Cleveland, but it turns into a thing of like I think I just saw someone, I think it was Matt Vesker, ranked the final power ranking whatever, and we were like 7. It's like, bro, what are we doing here, man? Like, so there's always going to be that, man. There's always that to fuel the fire a little bit.
So my last question for you, and it's somewhat about your outlook for 2025, but I watched your post-game presser after that game against the Yankees, and I thought you had a pretty powerful quote kind of about yourself. And I quote, he adjusted, he battled through a lot. I mean, definitely a different person and a different player from March 28th to October 20th. I grew a lot. I'm just curious, your growth from this year and how you're going to use that, to fuel the fire and hopefully win a Cy Young next year.
Yeah, I mean, I think the first month or two of the season, I mean, it was rough because I feel like I was trying to do so much to prove that I was the pitcher in 2023 when that wasn't the case because we weren't in 2023 anymore. And I think I was trying so hard to pitch well and do all these things, and it just really body wasn't cooperating, mind wasn't cooperating, and I just feel like once you kind of lock in what you need to do process wise, whether it's in between starts or the off season or whatever, it really helps you clear that mind because I stand by this thing. It's you don't rise to the occasion. You kind of sink to your training a little bit. Because I mean, usually when you're in those like say those big games or whether you're in a major league season, you're not going to rise to the occasion because it's all at that point it's all instincts and it's all competing, and your body's going to sink back down to what you've been doing the entire off season or whatever, however many months or weeks or whatever that you've been doing it. So I think that if you just get a good foundation, which I don't really feel like I had those first 2 months because I was trying to be something that I wasn't. And even if I did do better, I really don't think it would have been good down the road. I think it was a kind of a wake up call to fix the behind the scenes stuff of whether it was training or whatever. To really help me grow into what I was at the end of the year, which was vastly better than the first 1.5, 2 months, whatever it was.
Can't wait for next year, man. It's going to be an
absolute
blast. I really appreciate you coming on, of course, friend of the program. And I was already texting with you. I think you're going to have a huge
I do too, man.
All right. Well, appreciate you coming on, and we'll talk to you soon. Hopefully, maybe during the season, or we'll link up again soon, no doubt.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks for having me, guys.
You're the man, Tanner. Thanks.
Thanks, Aaron.